Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Chun stood at the edge of the training platform, watching his mixed-species squad struggle through the morning drill. His weathered hands gripped the railing as he observed the chaos below. Gray hair showed at his temples, and deep lines marked his face from years of squinting in different suns across the galaxy. "Move it, move it!" Chen's voice boomed across the training bay. "That plasma rifle doesn't care if you're tired." Below him, alien recruits from 6 different worlds scrambled through the obstacle course. The bird-like Zephyrians flapped their wings frantically, trying to navigate the zero-gravity section. Their bright feathers were already dull with sweat. The insect-like Thrixie clicked their mandibles in frustration as their 6 legs tangled in the rope-climbing section. The amphibious Quailans left wet trails as they slithered between barriers. Chun shook his head. These kids had potential, but they moved like they had all the time in the world. He checked his chronometer. In real combat, they would all be dead by now. "Sergeant Chen," a soft voice said behind him. He turned to see Commander Vex High, a tall Zephyrian with silver-tipped feathers that marked his senior rank. "Perhaps you could demonstrate the proper technique?" The younger alien recruits stopped their training to watch. Chun could see the doubt in their large eyes. Some whispered to each other in their native languages. He caught a few words he understood. "Ancient, fragile, should rest." Chun smiled. At 58, he was older than most of these aliens would ever live to be. But they didn't understand humans yet. "Copy that, Commander," Chun said. He walked to the starting line of the obstacle course. The Zephyrian medic, Kretak, stepped forward. Her feathers were still the bright blue of youth, marking her as barely past childhood by her species standards. "Sergeant, are you sure this is wise? Your heart rate and muscle tension suggests a significant strain." Chun chuckled. "Doc, I appreciate the concern, but I'm just getting warmed up." He dropped into a ready position. The course spread out before him. 30 meters of crawling under laser barriers, followed by a rope climb, then a zero-gravity section, and finally a target shooting challenge. Most recruits took 8 to 10 minutes to complete it. The record, held by a young Thrixie warrior, was 6 minutes and 40 seconds. "Timer starts." "Now," Commander Vex High called out. Chun exploded forward. His movements were smooth and efficient, nothing wasted. While the young aliens had thrashed and struggled, Chun flowed. He rolled under the laser barriers without breaking stride, his body remembering patterns drilled into muscle memory decades ago. At the rope climb, Chun's calloused hands found perfect grip. His shoulders, broadened by years of carrying heavy equipment across hostile worlds, pulled him up faster than aliens with natural climbing abilities. The rope barely swayed under his controlled descent. The zero-gravity section was where most recruits panicked. Without weight to anchor them, many species flailed helplessly. Chun activated his mag boots and moved through the section like he was walking on solid ground. His decades of shipboard experience showed as he used handholds and momentum with practiced ease. Finally, the shooting range. Plasma targets popped up at random intervals. Chun's rifle came up in one smooth motion. 30 years of combat experience guided his aim. Target after target fell with mechanical precision. His breathing never changed. His hands never shook. The timer stopped at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Silence filled the training bay. The alien recruits stared with their mouths, beaks, and mandibles hanging open. Even Commander Vex High's feathers ruffled with surprise. "Not bad for an old man," Chun said, checking his weapon's safety. He wasn't even breathing hard. A young Thrixie warrior named Ziktar approached cautiously. His carapace was still the bright green of youth, not yet darkened by age and experience. "Sergeant, how is this possible? Our instructors told us humans were similar to other species in physical capability." Chun set his rifle in the rack and faced the gathered aliens. Son, your instructors were working with outdated information. Humans develop differently than your species. Kretak stepped forward, her medical scanner still beeping warnings about Chun's age. But Sergeant, our records show you are 58 standard years old. By any species measure, you should be well past peak performance. In Zephyrian terms, you would be approaching ancient status. Ancient? Chun laughed. Kid, I'm just hitting my stride. See, human bodies don't work like yours. We don't peak at 20 and decline. We build up. Every year, every mission, every challenge makes us stronger, smarter, more experienced. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Their society was built around the idea that youth meant strength and age meant weakness. The concept of improvement over time was foreign to them. Chun continued. When I was your age, I was fast but sloppy. I wasted energy and made mistakes. Now, I know exactly how much force to use, exactly where to step, exactly when to breathe. That's not age slowing me down. That's experience making me efficient. A Qualan recruit named Blubdar spoke up, his voice bubbling through his breathing apparatus. But surely you must tire more easily now. Your reflexes must be slower? Chun shook his head. My reflexes aren't slower. They're more selective. I don't react to everything like a nervous rookie. I react to what matters. And as for getting tired, he gestured to the obstacle course. I could run that course 5 more times before lunch. The aliens murmured among themselves. This challenged everything they understood about aging and physical capability. In their experience, soldiers served short, intense periods before their bodies gave out. The idea of a warrior improving over decades was revolutionary. Commander Vex High cleared his throat. Sergeant Chun, if you don't mind me asking, when do humans typically retire from military service? Chen's grin widened. Well, Commander, that depends. Mandatory retirement age back on Earth is 75 for active combat roles. But some of our generals serve well into their 80s. And that's if they choose to retire at all. The silence that followed was deafening. These aliens, who considered 30 to be elderly, were trying to process the idea of humans fighting effectively for 60 years or more. Kretak's scanner beeped frantically as her hand shook. 75? Sergeant, that's impossible. No biological entity can maintain combat effectiveness for that long. Chun picked up his gear bag, the same easy motion he'd used for 3 decades. Doc, you're thinking like someone whose species burns bright and fast. Humans burn steady and long. We're built for the marathon, not the sprint. As he walked away, Chun called back over his shoulder. Tomorrow we're doing advanced tactics training. Hope you're all ready to learn something new. The aliens watched him go. Their understanding of biological limitations forever changed. They were beginning to realize that their alliance with humanity might be more significant than anyone had imagined. The next morning, Chun arrived at the training bay to find a crowd waiting for him. Word had spread through the station about yesterday's demonstration. Aliens from different units had come to see the impossible human for themselves. Chun set down his coffee and gear bag, ignoring the stares. He had faced enemy fire on 12 different worlds. A few curious aliens didn't bother him. Kretak approached first, her blue feathers nervous and twitchy. She carried her medical scanner and what looked like several data tablets. Sergeant Chun, I spent all night reviewing human biological data. The numbers don't make sense. What numbers, Doc? Your species' lifespan data, physical performance curves, neural development patterns. Everything contradicts what we know about biological limitations. She held up her scanner. According to our models, you should be barely functional at your age. Chun chuckled. Your models are wrong, Doc. They're based on your species' biology, not ours. More aliens gathered around. Chun recognized most of his regular squad, but there were others too. A group of Gorthak warriors, known across the galaxy for their strength, watched with interest. Several Thixie engineers clicked their mandibles in discussion. Even a few of the station's senior officers had found reasons to be in the training bay. Commander Vex High stepped forward. "Sergeant, if you have a moment, we would like to understand better. How long do humans typically serve in military roles?" "Depends on the individual and the position," Chun said, pulling up a chair. "Standard enlistment is usually 4 to 8 years for young folks. But career soldiers? We serve as long as we're able and willing." A young Gorthik named Thokmar spoke up. His species were proud warriors, but they burned out fast. Most retired by age 25 when their aggressive hormones began to fade. "How long is as long as you're able, human?" Chun scratched his chin, thinking. "Well, I've got a friend back on Earth, Carl Martinez. She's 71 and still running special operations training. Sharp as ever. Then there's General Harrison. He's 83 and just took over the Mars Defense Command." The aliens looked at each other in shock. Kretak's scanner nearly fell from her trembling hands. "That's impossible," whispered a Quailan officer. "No one lives that long, let alone remains combat effective." Chun laughed, a deep sound that echoed through the bay. "You think 70 is old?" "Son, by human standards, I'm barely middle-aged. I've got at least 20, maybe 30 more years of active service ahead of me. Maybe 40 if I take care of myself." The silence that followed was complete. Even the station's background hum seemed to quiet. Ziktar, the young Thrixie warrior, spoke first. "Sergeant, my people live maybe 40 years total. Most of us serve 8 years maximum before our carapaces become too brittle for combat. You're telling us you alone could serve longer than most of my people live?" "Could? Son, I plan to." Chun leaned back in his chair. "See, you're all thinking about this wrong. You see age as decline. Humans see it as accumulation." Kretak activated her scanner, pointing it at Chun. "But the biological degradation must be significant. Muscle mass loss, reaction time decrease, sensory impairment. Doc, you're looking at the wrong data." Chun stood and walked to the nearest weight station. He picked up a bar loaded with what would be a challenging weight for most of the alien species present. He lifted it over his head with smooth, controlled motion. "This isn't about muscle mass. It's about efficiency." He set the weight down and continued. "When I was 20, I could bench press more weight than I can now. But when I was 20, I also didn't know how to fight efficiently. I relied on strength and speed. Now I rely on knowledge and technique." A Zephyrian pilot named Velka raised her wing. "But surely there must be some decline in reflexes, in speed." Chun smiled. "Let me tell you something about speed. When I was a young Marine, I was fast. Really fast. But I jumped at every shadow, spun around at every noise, fired at every movement. I was so busy being fast that I missed what mattered." He gestured to Ziktar. "Yesterday, during the shooting drill, how many shots did you take to hit all your targets?" The young Thrixie looked embarrassed. 47 shots for 30 targets, Sergeant." "And how many did I take?" 30 shots for 30 targets." "Exactly. You were faster on the draw, but I was more accurate. That's what experience gives you, the wisdom to know when not to be fast, and when speed really matters." Commander Vex High stepped forward. "Sergeant, this raises important questions about human military organization. If your species maintains effectiveness for so long, how do you manage command structures? Do senior positions ever open up?" Chen's laugh was even louder this time. "Commander, that's the beauty of human longevity. We don't wait for seniors to die off to advance. We promote based on competence and need. A human can have multiple careers within their military service. He pointed to himself. Before I joined the Marines, I was a civilian engineer for 20 years. Built bridges, designed systems, managed construction projects. Then I decided I wanted to serve my species in a different way. So at 35, I enlisted as a private. The aliens stared in disbelief. The concept of changing careers, midlife, was foreign to species that barely lived long enough for one career. You enlisted as a private at 35? Totmar asked. But that's older than most Gorthic live to be. And I worked my way up through the ranks over the next 23 years. Every rank taught me something new. Every assignment added to my knowledge base. Chun's expression grew serious. See, that's what you're not understanding. I'm not just a 58-year-old Marine. I'm a 58-year-old human who spent 20 years learning engineering, then 23 years learning warfare. I'm carrying 60 years of accumulated knowledge and experience. Kretak's scanner was beeping frantically now. She stared at the readout. The cognitive capacity readings are off the charts. The knowledge retention patterns don't match any known biological model. That's because your models don't account for human neuroplasticity, Chai explained. Our brains don't stop learning and adapting at 20 like yours do. We keep growing, keep improving, keep accumulating skills and knowledge until we die. A new voice spoke from the back of the crowd. When do humans typically die, Sergeant? Chun looked around at all the young faces staring at him. Some species lived only 30 years. Others might reach 50 on a good day. To them, the idea of a century seemed impossible. Well, Chun said slowly, current human lifespan averages about 120 years. With good medical care and genetic therapy, some of us push 150. There are humans alive today who were born when your species first achieved spaceflight. The training bay erupted in excited chatter as aliens discussed this revelation in their native languages. Chum could pick out words of disbelief, concern, and wonder. Finally, Commander Vex High raised his wing for silence. Sergeant Chen, this information changes our understanding of human military capabilities significantly. If humans maintain effectiveness across such timescales and accumulate knowledge continuously. You're starting to get it, Commander, Chan said with a grin. Now imagine an entire human military where the average soldier has 40 years of experience, where generals have been studying warfare for 70 years, and where institutional knowledge goes back centuries through direct teacher-to-student transmission. The aliens fell silent again, finally beginning to comprehend what they had allied themselves with. They weren't just dealing with another short-lived species. They were dealing with beings who thought in geological timeframes and planned accordingly. Word about the immoral human warrior spread through the station like wildfire. Within 2 days, Chun found himself standing before a panel of senior alien officers in conference room Alpha. The room was packed with representatives from every species in the Galactic Coalition. Admiral Kexter, a massive Gorthic with scars covering his thick hide, leaned forward in his chair. Sergeant Chun, the claims about human longevity and sustained combat effectiveness are difficult to accept. We require verification. Chun stood at attention. Sir, I'm ready for any testing you deem necessary. We've designed a comprehensive evaluation, announced Dr. Sithala, a tall, tricksy scientist. Her ancient carapace was nearly black with age, marking her as one of the oldest of her species still alive. Physical capability assessment, cognitive function tests, and combat simulation exercises. The tests are calibrated for peak performance specimens from each species, added General Corvin, a Zephyrian whose silver feathers indicated a lifetime of military service. We want to see how a mature human compares to our finest young warriors. Chun nodded. "When do we start, sir?" "Immediately," Admiral Kexter rumbled. "Follow Dr. Sifala to Testing Bay 7. The testing bay was massive, filled with equipment Chun didn't recognize. Alien technicians scurried around, setting up monitoring devices and calibrating machines. A viewing gallery above was packed with officers and scientists. "First test, raw physical strength," Dr. Sifala announced. She gestured to a platform where 3 other beings waited. "You'll compete against Thokmar, our strongest young Gorthok, Velra, a prime-age Zephyrian, and Zixon, a Thrixie in peak condition." Chun looked at his competition. Thokmar was a mountain of muscle, easily twice Chin's size. Velra's hollow bones and powerful flight muscles gave her incredible lifting power. Zixon's 6 limbs and exoskeleton provided natural mechanical advantage. The test was simple: lift progressive weights until failure. Thokmar went first, his species pride on display. He managed an impressive 450 kilograms before his muscles gave out. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Velra used her wings and arms together, managing 380 kilograms. Zixon's multiple limbs and leverage helped her reach 420 kilograms. Chun stepped up to the platform. The weight started at 100 kilograms and increased automatically. He lifted steadily, his breathing controlled and even. His technique was flawless, proper form learned through decades of training. 300 kilograms. 350. 400. The crowd grew quiet. 450 kilograms, matching Thokmar's best. Chun's face showed no strain. 0.500 kilograms. The bar came up smooth and controlled at 520 kilograms. Chun finally stopped, not because he couldn't lift more, but because his form started to break down. He set the weight down safely and stepped back. Thokmar stared in disbelief. "How? You're half my size and 3 times my age." "It's not about size, son," Chun said, barely breathing hard. "It's about efficiency. I've been lifting weights for 40 years. I know exactly how to engage every muscle fiber, exactly how to breathe, exactly how to position my body for maximum mechanical advantage." The next test was agility and speed, an obstacle course that required running, jumping, climbing, and crawling. Chun competed against the fastest young warriors from each species. The Zephyrian pilot flew through the aerial sections. The Thrixie warrior used his multiple limbs to scamper over barriers. The Qualan recruit slithered through tight spaces with ease. Chun ran the course like he was walking through his own home. Every step was placed with precision. Every movement flowed into the next. While the younger beings rushed and stumbled, Chun moved with mechanical consistency. He finished 3rd in raw time. But the judging computers noted something interesting. Chun's heart rate never spiked. His breathing never became labored, and his movements never became sloppy. The others finished faster, but were exhausted. "Remarkable," Dr. Sifala noted, studying her readings. "The human maintains efficiency throughout the entire test. No wasted energy, no panic responses." The 3rd test was endurance. All competitors were put on exercise machines and pushed to their limits. One by one, the younger aliens began to fade. Their peak performance dropped off as fatigue set in. Chun found his rhythm and held it. His pace never varied. His form never deteriorated. After an hour, he was still going strong while the others had stopped. "Sergeant Chen," Dr. Sifala called over the intercom. "You may stop now. The test is complete." Chun stepped off the machine, still breathing normally. "All ready, Doc?" "I was just getting warmed up." The final test was cognitive function under stress. All competitors were put through complex tactical problems, while physical stressors were applied. Flashing lights, loud noises, uncomfortable temperatures. The younger aliens struggled to maintain focus as the distractions increased. Their performance degraded quickly as their stress responses kicked in. Chen's performance actually improved. The chaotic environment seemed to sharpen his focus rather than disrupt it. He solved problems faster and more accurately as the stress increased. How is this possible? General Corvin demanded. Stress should impair cognitive function. Chen smiled. General, this isn't stress to me. This is a normal Tuesday. I've been in real combat situations that make this testing environment seem like a vacation. My brain has learned to work better under pressure, not worse. The final challenge was a combat simulation. Chen was placed in a holographic battlefield against multiple opponents. The computer generated enemies with the reflexes and abilities of the galaxy's finest warriors. Chen didn't try to outrun or outfight them directly. Instead, he used terrain, timing, and tactics. He set traps, used cover effectively, and engaged only when he had advantage. Every shot was precise. Every movement had purpose. Where younger warriors would have charged in relying on speed and strength, Chen fought smart. He eliminated 12 opponents without taking a single hit. The tactical awareness is extraordinary, observed Aquilin Admiral. He's not just reacting to threats, he's predicting them. When the tests were complete, Chen stood before the panel of officers again. The room was silent as Dr. Sithala reviewed her data. The results are unprecedented, she finally announced. In raw physical capability, the human matches or exceeds our peak performers. In endurance and stress tolerance, he surpasses them significantly. In tactical thinking and combat effectiveness, there's no comparison. Admiral Kexter leaned forward. How do you explain this, Sergeant? Chen thought for a moment. Sir, you're testing me like I'm a young warrior trying to prove myself. But I'm not young. I'm experienced. Every test you put me through, I face some version of in real life. He gestured to the testing equipment. That strength test. I've carried wounded comrades across battlefields. That agility course? I've navigated hostile terrain under enemy fire. That endurance trial? I've marched for days with minimal food and water. That tactical simulation? I've been in actual firefights where one mistake meant death. The aliens exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand. You see, Chen continued, you're not testing my physical capabilities against your young warriors. You're testing decades of accumulated skill and experience against raw potential. It's not a fair comparison for them. Dr. Sithala's mandibles clicked in thought. Sergeant, if this is typical for human warriors of your age, it's not just typical, Doc. It's expected. Where I come from, a 58-year-old Marine who couldn't outperform a bunch of 20-year-olds would be considered below average. The room erupted in excited chatter. Officers huddled together, discussing the implications. Chen stood patiently, waiting for them to process what they'd learned. Finally, Admiral Kexter called for silence. Sergeant Chen, you've given us much to consider. The Coalition's understanding of human military capability was inadequate. Chen nodded. Sir, if it helps, I'm not even close to our best. I'm just a standard line sergeant. You should see what our Special Forces veterans can do. The Admiral's eyes widened. There are more capable humans than you? Chen grinned. Sir, in human terms, I'm just getting started. 2 weeks later, Chen found himself standing in the Central Council chamber of the Galactic Coalition. Representatives from over 30 species filled the circular amphitheater, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien biology. The chamber hummed with nervous energy as translators worked overtime. Admiral Kexter stood at the center podium. This emergency session has been called to reassess our classification of human military capabilities. Sergeant Chen, please take the witness stand. Chen walked to the designated spot, aware of hundreds of alien eyes tracking his movement. Some species he'd never seen before had sent representatives specifically for this meeting. "Sergeant," began Counselor Leandro, a tall vegan whose crystalline features caught the chamber's lights. "Your recent performance has raised questions about our understanding of human biology and military potential. Please help us understand. Are you exceptional among your species?" Chun chuckled. "Counselor, I'm about as average as they come. Standard career Marine, standard training, standard experience for someone my age." A murmur ran through the chamber. Translation devices struggled to convey the concept of average when applied to capabilities that exceeded their finest warriors. "That's impossible," declared General Thrixver, an insectoid commander whose carapace bore the scars of decades of combat. "No species maintains such capability across extended lifespans." "With respect, General, that's because you're thinking in terms of your species' lifespan, not ours." Chan activated the holographic display at his station. "May I show you something?" The chamber's central screen lit up with an image of Earth's Sol System Defense Fleet. Massive ships hung in space, their hulls gleaming with armor and weapons. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun, no relation. By the way, commanding the Third Fleet. She's 92 years old and has been in space combat for 70 years. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several aliens made gestures that Chun's translator identified as expressions of disbelief. The image changed to show a wrinkled, human man in a military uniform covered with decorations. "This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres, age 98. He designed the tactical doctrine that broke the Centauri blockade 40 years ago. He's currently planning the defense strategy for the next century." "Next century?" squeaked a Rillan representative. "But he'll be dead." Chun shook his head. "He'll be 198 if he lives to see the plan's completion. And knowing Torres, he probably will. But that's not the point. The point is that he's planning for campaigns that will outlast most of your species' entire lifespans." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Counselor Andra leaned forward. "Sergeant, are you suggesting that human military planning operates on timescales of centuries?" "Standard practice," Chun confirmed. "Our strategic command maintains operational plans spanning 300 years. We have contingency strategies for threats we might not encounter for decades. Human generals routinely plan campaigns that they know they won't live to see completed." He changed the display again. This time, it showed a complex timeline with military operations marked across centuries. This is just one example. The Terramars Defensive Coordination. It's a military alliance and strategic plan that's been continuously updated and refined for over 200 years. The officers who started it are long dead, but their successors built on their work. And their successors will build on our work. A Gorthic counselor named Threxstock stood up. "But how do you maintain continuity across such timeframes?" "Knowledge dies with the knowledgeable." Chum smiled. "That's where you're wrong, counselor. Human military tradition includes something we call institutional memory. Every senior officer is required to train their replacements. Every veteran shares their knowledge with younger soldiers. We don't just pass down tactics and strategy. We pass down experience itself." The display showed images of human military academies, with elderly instructors teaching younger students. Take our war college on Earth. Some of our instructors are over 100 years old. They teach students who will go on to fight in conflicts that haven't even started yet. But those students will carry the lessons learned from wars fought before they were born. Dr. Sifila, who had attended via holographic projection, spoke up. "Sergeant, this suggests a level of strategic depth that spans geological timeframes. How does this affect your species' approach to warfare?" Chun's expression grew serious. "Doc, humans don't fight wars. We fight campaigns that might last decades. We plan for peace that might last centuries. When we make an alliance, we're thinking about how our great-grandchildren will honor it." He gestured to the assembled aliens. "Most of your species plan military operations in terms of months or years, because that's how long your leaders serve. Humans plan in terms of centuries, because we know our civilization will still be here." The chamber erupted in discussion. Translators worked frantically as different species tried to comprehend the concept of institutional planning across multiple lifetimes. Admiral Kexter called for order. "Sergeant Chen, what you're describing sounds like a military organization that never truly forgets anything it learns." "That's exactly right, Admiral. Every human conflict teaches us lessons that get incorporated into our training, our doctrine, our planning. We've been refining our military knowledge for thousands of years. It's cumulative." Chun brought up a new display showing ancient human conflicts. "The tactical principles we used against the Vega pirates last year? Some of them trace back to battles fought on Earth 3,000 years ago. We adapt them, improve them, but we never lose them." Counselor Ithandra's crystalline features shifted, indicating deep thought. "This explains why human military responses seem so overwhelming. You're not just bringing current capabilities to bear. You're bringing millennia of accumulated knowledge." "Now you're starting to understand," Chun said. "When humans engage in military action, we're not just committing soldiers and ships. We're committing the collected experience of our entire military history." A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "Sergeant, are all human soldiers like you?" Chun looked toward the speaker, a young Zephyrian officer he didn't recognize. "Define like me, sir. Capable of performance that exceeds our peak warriors despite advanced age." Chun considered the question carefully. "Officer, what you saw in testing wasn't exceptional human capability. It was ordinary human experience applied to extraordinary longevity. Every human soldier who reaches my age has accumulated similar knowledge and skills." He paused, looking around the chamber. "But here's what might really surprise you. I'm not even close to our best. I'm line infantry. Solid, reliable, but basic. Our special forces are elite units. Our senior commanders, they operate on a level that would make your finest warriors look like children." The chamber fell completely silent. General Thrixfer spoke slowly. "Sergeant, how many humans like you are there in your military?" "Define like me," Chun said again. "Veterans with 40-plus years of experience." Chun thought for a moment. "Currently, about 8 million in active service, maybe 12 million in reserves." The number hit the chamber like a shockwave. Several aliens had to be helped to their seats. "That's more veteran soldiers than most species have total population," whispered the Rillan representative. Chun nodded. "And that's just currently serving. We have maybe 50 million living veterans with various levels of experience. In a real crisis, we could mobilize military expertise that represents thousands of accumulated years of combat knowledge." Admiral Kexter leaned heavily on his podium. "Sergeant Chen, what you're describing isn't just a military force. It's a war machine that spans centuries and accumulates power over time." "Admiral, you're thinking about it wrong," Chun said gently. "We're not a war machine. We're a peace machine. We've learned from thousands of years of conflict that the best way to prevent war is to be so overwhelmingly prepared for it that no one wants to start one." He gestured to the assembled representatives. "This coalition exists because humans decided that peace through cooperation was better than peace through domination. But make no mistake, we're prepared for either option." The chamber remained silent as the aliens absorbed this revelation. They had thought they were allying with just another short-lived species. Instead, they had discovered they were dealing with beings who thought in geological time and planned accordingly. Finally, Counselor Ithandra spoke. "Sergeant Chen, This changes everything we thought we knew about human capabilities and intentions. How should we proceed? Chun smiled. The same way we've been proceeding, counselor. Humans prefer cooperation to conquest, peace to war, building to destroying. But now you understand why we can afford to be patient and generous. We've got time. 3 months later, Chun stood in what used to be Training Base 7, now renamed the Long-Term Strategic Operations Center. The space had been completely redesigned, filled with holographic displays showing military deployments across dozens of star systems. Campaign timelines stretched across centuries, marked with careful notations about resource allocation, strategic objectives, and contingency planning. Instructor Chun, called Admiral Kexter, who now served as Deputy Director of Coalition Strategic Planning. The new cadets are arriving for orientation. Chun nodded, straightening his new uniform. The rank insignia was unique, a position created specifically for human veterans. Strategic Combat Instructor, with authority that crossed traditional military hierarchies. He was no longer just a gunnery sergeant. He was now a living library of warfare. The first group of alien officers entered the center, their expressions mixing curiosity with nervousness. Chun recognized some faces from his original training squad, but there were many new species represented. Word about human military capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy, and everyone wanted their best officers trained by human veterans. Kretak entered with the group, her blue feathers now marked with silver streaks, indicating her promotion to senior medical officer. She carried a datapad and looked much more confident than the nervous medic Chen remembered. "Welcome to the long-term strategic course," Chen announced to the assembled group. "Over the next 6 months, you'll learn to think beyond the immediate tactical situation and plan for campaigns that span decades." A young Gorthek officer raised his massive hand. "Instructor, with respect, my species rarely lives long enough to see decade-long campaigns completed. How can this knowledge be useful to us?" Chun smiled. It was the same question he'd been asked dozens of times. "Officer Throken, you're thinking individually instead of institutionally. Your personal lifespan doesn't matter. What matters is that your species learns to build strategic depth that outlasts any individual." He activated a holographic display showing the Gorthok homeworld. "Your planet has been invaded 4 times in the last century. Each time, your people fought bravely, but were forced to start from scratch strategically. You never built on previous lessons because you didn't have institutional memory." The display showed battle formations and defensive strategies. "Human advisors have helped you establish the Gorthok War College. Now, when the next invasion comes, and there will be one, your commanders will have access to everything learned from the previous 4 invasions, plus everything we've learned from thousands of years of human warfare." Throken's eyes widened. "You mean the knowledge doesn't die with the general?" "Exactly. The knowledge becomes stronger with each generation that adds to it." A Zephyrian pilot named Veltar spoke up. "Instructor Chen, I heard rumors that humans are planning military operations that won't begin for 50 years. Is this true?" Chun chuckled. "Veltar, we have operational plans that won't even be considered for implementation for 200 years. We're currently running strategic simulations for threats that our computer models suggest might emerge in the late 23rd century." The aliens looked at each other with expressions Chun had learned to recognize. It was the same look he'd gotten 3 months ago when he'd first explained human longevity. Complete inability to process the concept of such extended planning. "But why?" asked a Qualan engineer named Blubrex. "How can you possibly predict threats so far in the future?" "We don't predict specific threats," Chun explained. "We prepare for classes of threats. We study patterns that repeat across centuries and develop responses to those patterns. The display changed to show a complex web of historical data. For example, every 200 to 300 years, some species develops technology that makes them think they're invincible. They start expanding aggressively, conquering neighbors, building empires. It's happened 17 times in recorded galactic history. The web highlighted different time periods and species. Each time, the pattern is similar. Rapid expansion, overextension, internal conflicts, eventual collapse. So we maintain strategic plans for containing aggressive expansionist powers, regardless of which species it might be or what specific technology they develop. Kretak raised her wing. Instructor, this seems to require an enormous amount of resources dedicated to planning that might never be needed. Doc, that's where you're wrong. The planning itself is valuable, whether we use it or not. Every scenario we plan for teaches us something new. Every contingency we develop strengthens our strategic thinking. The planning makes us better at handling any crisis, not just the ones we plan for. A new voice spoke from the back of the group. Instructor Chun, may I ask about your personal experience? Chun looked toward the speaker and suppressed a grin. It was a young Thrixie officer, barely past the equivalent of human adolescence. The name tag read Zikvar, clearly related to Ziktar from his original squad. What would you like to know, Officer Zikvar? How do you personally cope with planning for events you'll never see? Doesn't it seem pointless? Chun walked over to stand in front of the young officer. Son, let me ask you something. When you were young, did your parents plant trees in your yard? Zikvar's mandibles clicked in confusion. Yes, several. But I don't understand. Did your parents expect to see those trees reach full size? No, Instructor. Thrixie trees take 50 years to mature. My parents' lifespan is only 40, so why did they plant them? Zikvar was quiet for a moment, thinking. For future generations. So that someday, young Thrixie would have shade and shelter. Exactly. That's what human strategic planning is, planting trees for future generations. I'm planning campaigns I'll never see because someday, human soldiers who aren't even born yet might need those plans. Chun turned to address the entire group. That's the first lesson of long-term strategic thinking. You're not planning for yourself. You're planning for your species' future. You're contributing to something bigger and longer lasting than your individual existence. The room was quiet as the aliens absorbed this concept. Admiral Kexter entered the center, carrying several data tablets. Instructor Chun, we've received the results from the first class of graduates. Chun looked at the Admiral with interest. How did they do, sir? Remarkable. The Zephyrian officers have established a strategic planning division that's already identified 3 potential threats to their system. The Gorthic War College has developed defensive strategies that incorporate lessons from 17 different historical conflicts. Even the short-lived Rillan have created an institutional knowledge preservation system. The Admiral paused, looking at the current class. The officers trained in human strategic methods are thinking beyond immediate problems. They're building institutional strength. Chun nodded with satisfaction. That's the goal, Admiral. Not to make them think like humans, but to help them think beyond their natural lifespan limitations. Officer Throke raised his hand again. Instructor, will you be training classes like this for the next 40 years? Chun's laughter filled the room. Son, I plan to be training classes like this for the next 40 years, then spend 20 years developing advanced curricula, then maybe another 20 years writing comprehensive strategic doctrine. After that, I'll probably have learned enough to really start contributing something valuable. The aliens stared at him in amazement. The concept of an 80-year career in military education was beyond their comprehension. Kretak spoke up, her voice filled with wonder. Instructor, you really do think in geological timeframes. Doc, humans don't have a choice. We live long enough that we have to think long-term, or we waste our lives on short-term problems. We've learned that the best way to solve immediate problems is usually to build systems that prevent them from recurring. Chun walked to the center of the room. That's your homework for next week. Each species will identify one recurring problem that has affected your people for generations. Then you'll design a 100-year plan to eliminate that problem permanently. Not manage it, not cope with it, eliminate it. A Qualan officer named Glubfish raised a tentacle. 100 years? But most of us won't live that long. Chun smiled. That's exactly the point, officer. You're going to learn to solve problems that outlast you. You're going to think beyond your own existence and plan for your species' future. As the class filed out, chattering excitedly in their various languages, Admiral Kexter approached Chun. Instructor, I have to ask, are all human training methods this overwhelming? Chun chuckled. Admiral, this is basic orientation. Wait until we start covering advanced strategic doctrine and long-term resource management. That's when things get really interesting. The Admiral's expression showed a mixture of excitement and terror. What have we gotten ourselves into, partnering with humanity? Chun looked out at the holographic displays showing centuries of planned operations, and the data streams representing the accumulated knowledge of thousands of years of human warfare, at the careful preparations for threats that might not emerge for generations. Admiral, you've gotten yourselves into the safest position in the galaxy. You're allied with a species that plans for everything, prepares for anything, and has the patience to see it through. We might be slow to anger,